Good morning, good afternoon, and good night to everybody joining from around the world, and welcome to Rolling Out Slack to Thousands of Users, a part of the Slack Frontiers admin track. Thank you for joining us for our first fully remote conference. For this session, I'm excited to welcome you to what is sure to become your new favorite show, the Slack Launch Game Show. I'm your host for today's game, Rob Hardy. I'm an engagement manager on Slack's customer success team, where our primary goal is to ensure all of our customers maximize the value they receive from their Slack partnership. Today, I'll be interviewing our contestants about how they might woo thousands of end users into seamlessly adopting Slack. They'll tell us how they've done it, and our judges will weigh in. Today, we have some excellent guests from Arizona State University, Samantha Becker and Warwick Pond. Samantha and Warwick, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Thanks so much, Rob. I'm Samantha Becker, and I am the Executive Director for Creative and Communications at ASU's University Technology Office. In terms of the Slack rollout here, I was responsible for bolstering awareness and desire to use Slack. And something to know about ASU is that our mission is really fueling everything we do, and that is the same for our Slack rollout. And our mission very much here is centered around inclusion. We measure ourselves by who we include rather than who we exclude. And so when thinking about the scale of ASU, it's all about making sure our community members here are engaged and included.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Sam. Warwick Pond, Executive Director of Enterprise Initiatives at the University Technology Office, which embraces its role as both an enabler and catalyst for advancing the vision and the work for the new American University. Happy to be here, and I'm here for big bucks and no whammies.
Good deal. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's wonderful to have you. Now, as a refresher for those tuning in at home, in the Slack Launch Game Show, we throw challenging questions at our contestants to see how they fare in the exciting battle to get end users onto Slack. I'll ask a question, Sam and Warwick will give their solutions, and our nameless, faceless judges will decide their fates. Do they have what it takes to play? Let's find out. And for those of you playing along at home, please post your answers in the Slack Workspace for Frontiers, Slack for Admins channel. So on to question number one. We know in the context of Arizona State University, we're talking about a campus of hundreds of thousands of users. With a launch of that size, how do you inspire at such scale?
You know, that's a great question. And some of you in the audience may not be coming to us from institutions. You may just be from big businesses or places where there are hundreds of thousands of people. There are 120,000 students across ASU's campus immersion experience, as well as ASU Online. And so thinking about how to cater to such a large population, we break it down by trying to understand what our individuals, what our community members want and need. And that all comes into play when we think about creating a unique value proposition. So we didn't just start by thinking, if we have Slack available, they'll come. We wanted to find out what our community members needed and wanted out of a communication and collaboration hub in their digital campus experience. And so we created a unique value proposition that was all about personalizing the experience for our community members. So right up here on the screen, you'll see a link that leads to our vision and more about our use of Slack. And you could hear about our unique value proposition. Our unique value proposition, for example, includes being a reductionist tool. With our app integrations, Slack really has become that digital hub where everyone can go to get everything done, from communications to project management to teaching and learning. Another part of our unique value proposition has been around sharing in affinities. And that means being able to find people who are pursuing the same passions and interests as you, which with such a large community of 120,000 plus students, that's what it takes to really form those deep connections. Warwick, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I love that. In terms of our vision for Slack, we saw that Slack was an extension of our campus and our digital campus. So when you're thinking about rolling out at a scale of multinational organization, think of it as just an extension of your business locations, and tie that to the unique value proposition that Samantha discussed. And in terms of inspiring to get at scale, I say don't go at it alone. Don't just have a single team that is responsible for adoption. Build that community and have the community inspire. We went about creating a champions network that really went out and shared some of the things that they use Slack for, because many in the community really may just have viewed Slack as just an instant messenger and didn't really understand its potential of how it could impact and value their day-to-day work or collaborations.
Thank you both so much for those fantastic answers. It sounds like our judges are weighing in, and they're asking me to change your game show names to Spinal Tap because they just awarded you an 11 out of 10. And I think a big part of it is they were really excited to hear about the clear vision you had, and thank you for demonstrating and sharing it with us, as well as the engagement with cross-functional stakeholders, which I think is just a clear indicator of success for customers. Again, to your point, regardless of whether it's an educational institution such as yours, or whatever multinational, international customers we might have, across the board, engaging with those stakeholders that you're bringing that value to is critical. So thank you for sharing that. Moving on to question number 2. Again, with all these cross-functional stakeholders, all these different types of personas, these incredible amounts of users, how did you build one cohesive plan to represent the masses?
That's a great question, Rob. And I think the answer is building a true Tiger team. We've all come to know the story of Apollo 13 and the Tiger team that NASA built when a module failed. Today, Tiger teams are a popular and effective team structure for organizations who need a focus group of experts to manage the technical deployment of complex issues. So bringing a true cross-functional team, that is exactly what we focused on. We brought faculty, online, immersive students, staff, anyone that was going to use Slack. And we also partnered with our Slack customer support group and representatives. And that became part of the team, bringing them together and having them understand what their role is and honoring their expertise in that role, so that they didn't just join the team asking themselves, what am I doing here? Building that team so that they can challenge one another and also be vulnerable with one another. And we did not treat it as a technical implementation. We treated it as an enterprise release and adoption that needed to be done. So we created personas in terms of representing the masses. And we held many jam sessions. Think of those as just focus groups of actual people out there. And then we shared stories of early adopters and successes and focused on those early adopters to become our influencers. And that is how we, kind of set aside to represent the masses and the use of Slack. I'm sure Samantha has her own perspective of being part of this team.
Absolutely. And part of that means we're all human, right? We are sharing about Slack to our community. And so that means our plan, like human beings, is constantly evolving. So our plan itself was created in wet clay, so to speak. Our whole communication strategy is currently in Google Docs, still being iterated to this day, because our Slack strategy is changing as we're learning new things and our community is finding new applications. And so when we were putting together that unique value proposition I referenced at the beginning, we actually invited in our stakeholders to comment on the plan, to add their thoughts, to add other channels and dimensions that they thought would better represent and help us better communicate with the community. And so because we had students, we had faculty, and we had staff involved in building that plan, and now giving us feedback to constantly iterate that plan, it really reflects our community.
Fantastic, wonderful. Again, common themes emerging already with engaging with those cross-functional stakeholders, and really, personally love that that persona-based enablement, right? Learning from our stakeholders and using what we learn to target and bring value to specific different types of personas, because no two users are going to be exactly the same. I'm trying to get an answer from our judges here, and they're not giving me a response. I'm hearing that they're actually too busy going online and creating new accounts to give that answer 5 stars. So we're going to go ahead and give it to you. Congratulations on going 2 for 2 so far. And let's just keep this train rolling right into question number 3. Where do these thousands and thousands of people go on day one in Slack after a new launch?
Yeah, it's easy to get lost unless you design with purpose. So having an enterprise grid within Slack at ASU is imperative. You may find within your organization that workspaces already exist. That is exactly what we found. So we set about actually migrating over 5,000 workspaces that existed already within the ASU enterprise. And then we designed workspaces and the grid by which we wanted those workspaces to work with the individual and engage with the individual. So those included workspaces that were shared throughout the enterprise, workspaces that were for specific departments and colleges, and workspaces that were specific to the classroom for the faculty and the students to collaborate. So integrating the creation of those workspaces with the class and program curriculum so faculty can choose whether they wanted a Slack workspace for their classrooms and their class experience for their students. And then working with departments, sitting down with individuals to design what their workspaces and their channels would look like and how they would interact with one another. And, you know, from there, creating affinity channels. Where did people want to convene? How do people work? Not how you're organized structurally, but how do you work and how does work get done? And that took some design and some creative thinking. And Sam can share a multitude of examples.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So picture this. You're a new Sun Devil. It's day one. You're excited, but you don't exactly know where to turn. That feeling of uncertainty, especially maybe amplified in a global pandemic. So day one and even before day one, you get to go to the Devil to Devil community on Slack. And that's a place where you really could answer any question. And the unique aspect of that is you're getting answers from real Sun Devils, students who have been through it. You could ask anything from financial aid to questions about residence halls to classes, and other students and their voices will answer it for you. I know personally that's a lot more authentic than the feeling of maybe having to ask a faculty member or an RA. People just want to hear from people who have been there, done that, and also can find new connections to link up with in other ways. Kind of flip that over to the staff side, and even thinking about the student side. As we know, the average age of an undergraduate student is actually just over 27. And then couple that with the fact that we have 17,000 staff and 5,000 faculty members at ASU. And many of those, between those three stakeholder groups, are parents. So day one, you're balancing work. Maybe you're balancing work and school. Either way, it's a lot. You get to go to the remote working live parenting channel and enjoy crazy GIFs, horror stories about, the crazy start of a new, Zoom homeschooling experience. But above all else, you feel a sense of belonging. And it's the sense of work-life integration, not just work-life balance, but integration, because the Slack community has become that place where we can not just connect to learn, we don't just connect to learn and get questions answered and asked, but to feel human and to kind of feel assured that it's okay to be human here at ASU.
Thank you so much for sharing. I absolutely love that. And the intentional design so that people know where to go to have the conversations they need to have, to collaborate with the people with which they need to collaborate. And then also using Slack as an opportunity to really build culture and foster this culture. And I can only imagine, Sam, the example that you offered up, being able to show up on day one and still have that sort of culture connection. I mean, that's an immediate, value add to that end user, that person that, now has instant connections, and they're already starting to see what's in it for them as far as adopting Slack, and then not only using it for the culture, which is so important, but then beginning to become more productive and more efficient with the work they need to do. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm hearing from our judges now. You were this close to an A++ on that answer. They're giving you an A+ for the soft G on GIF. They had to subtract a single plus for that. I do apologize. You still have a chance to go 5 for 5, and there's still a super triple mega bonus multiplier out there potentially. So we'll keep this rolling right into question number 4. Maybe it's a pronunciation of GIF and GIF, but as far as the actual deployment itself goes, what bumps in the road did you anticipate or overcome to ensure a successful launch?
I'm happy to take that. Rob. And apparently GIF and GIF battle rages on. So bumps in the road. you've got your dream team, bunch of experts in their fields. We created iterative plans. We built a network of champions that were sharing out uses of Slack. And then boom, you're coming back into the atmosphere and you've hit something. That is bound to happen. Thankfully, we ran iteratively. And there are a number of bumps in the road, possibly even explosions across the journey that we took within Slack. So when you have a tool that can be used on mobile devices, that can be used on laptops and desktops, it becomes ubiquitous. And one of the questions is who owns Slack? Who takes ownership? Who provisions users? Who controls workspaces? Who gets to set private channels? Do you allow students to set private channels? How do you monitor those channels? How do you ensure there's no bullying within those channels, right? So ownership was one of the big hurdles that we had to tackle early on. And part of that is governance as well. We set naming conventions for channels with prefixes. We even set naming conventions for personal profile names. We didn't want anyone to just go in there and say, like I would prefer, type in my name as Batman. We wanted individuals to connect with individuals as who they are, and an ability to affiliate themselves with each other. There was also confusion with our customers in the design sessions. What is the difference between a workspace and a channel and a direct message? So customers in many design sessions wanted multiple workspaces. Just having them understand that means you have to leave that workspace, enter into another workspace. Do you want to share channels instead across workspaces? These were kind of some of the confusion in the design sessions that we're running into. For ASU and for possibly your own organization, there was already existing competition of tool sets. So we had 6 existing tool sets that could do a lot of the things that Slack could do. And so how do we create, a desire to switch over and migrate over and adopt Slack? There was no pedagogical evidence that Slack would work in the learning space in the classrooms. So partnering with early adopting faculty that would be willing to use it in their classrooms and as part of their curriculums. Many saw Slack as just, again, instant messaging tool, capturing that imagination that this also can do work automation. It integrates that work, and you can have experiences with students, with customers, with each other that is process driven rather than just I'm engaging in instant messaging chat. So think of student collaboration and what does that look like, and how do you start that off and automate some of those processes. And then also there was a collaboration tool fatigue. The viewpoint or perspective that this was additive and just yet another tool. Right? These were all some of the bumps in the road that we had to address. We addressed early on as part of our vision, as part of our value proposition, and we created an extensive amount of collateral to help share the messaging of what Slack could do, including a channel called Slack Hacks, and including the notion of a hackathon for Slack, a Slackathon, right, of how others are using Slack across the enterprise. And Sam definitely has experiences with her creative and comms team of how they integrated a lot of this.
Yeah, Warwick, well, first of all, you should be losing a couple points for accidentally admitting and revealing you are in fact Batman. I mean, I knew that, but now everyone does. So good luck. But those creative faculty that you mentioned earlier, those early adopters, actually came in handy for when it came to the obstacles and the bumps in the night that the creative and comms team had to overcome. So you may be challenged by this too if you're working for an organization of thousands, but it's actually pretty hard to get the word out to thousands of people at once. ASU in general is very intentional about how and how often it communicates directly with its students and its faculty. And that's because it's important not to overwhelm people with too many communications. And that goes hand in hand with this tool fatigue that Warwick discussed. there's communication fatigue. So for communicating directly to students and faculty about Slack, then that opens the door to what about this tool and what about that tool? So we have to be very, very careful. And also we wanted it to feel organic. We're trying to generate pull here rather than pushing change. We want people to see the value because it adds value to their everyday lives. So we started by creating communications kits. And these kits contain things like blurbs, slide decks, visioning and design group, focus group sessions that departments could do themselves, blog posts, and really informational bits and testimonials about Slack to help communicators, Slack champions, excited faculty, motivated students kind of enlist their friends, their colleagues to join and understand the value as well. So that was really, really helpful because rather than us talking at people, as the university technology office saying, hey, adopt Slack, it was other people who are finding meaning and value in Slack who were the biggest champions or advocates. And by the way, all those people that came to those design sessions, those focus groups, those visioning sessions, whatever you want to call them, are now active Slack champs. And what we mean by that is we actually have a cross ASU channel of Slack champions. And these are folks, and that channel keeps growing. These are folks that are just, whether they're new to Slack or those early adopters who are building their own bots, are exchanging information, exciting developments, and continuing to spread the word throughout ASU in such an organic way. So again, your biggest proponents and advocates and best communicators are always going to be the people who are successfully and creatively using the technology.
Absolutely love that. Again, I think a lot of recurring themes here, but even in the face of challenges or resistance, it sounds like it really came down to having that clear vision that you had previously articulated, continuing to engage with stakeholders, and then having a really, really deliberate, although living and iterative change plan to continue to drive those outcomes. And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of those change kits that you all developed are actually available on the ASU website under a Creative Commons license. Is that correct?
Yes. So let's bring back the ASU mission, our charter of inclusion. And that means we're measured by who we include and how they succeed. And that's not just limited to the ASU community. What we produce here really, we believe, can change the world and help people. So all of our supportive materials for faculty, for staff, for students, and everything we've learned in the process, our manuals, our kits, we were able to put open licenses on them, or Creative Commons 4.0 international attribution licenses, which means that any organization is freely able to utilize or adapt those materials. And there's more about the license itself on those materials. But if you go to the website that we brought up earlier, UTO Slack presence, you'll be able to find a number of those materials. It's really important for us to pay it forward.
Thank you so much, Sam. That's a really generous gesture on ASU's part, and I think as I'm hearing the response coming in from the judges, it's incredibly loud. They're going wild. I do have to mute them. I did catch though that they've decided to add the additional plus back to your A++ as a thank you for your generosity in sharing those change kits with the Creative Commons license. Congratulations to all the Frontiers attendees who now have access to those and can go find those, both linked in this presentation as well as available in the Slack for Admins channel in the Slack Frontiers workspace. So thank you again, Sam, for sharing those incredibly generous, and congratulations on another correct answer, 4 out of 4 so far, and the redemption of the A++. So let's.
I'll never make the same mistake again. GIF. There, I said
it. Thanks, Sam. Rolling into question number 5, our last question of the day, and an opportunity to go a rare 5 for 5 on the Slack game show, the Slack launch game show. Now that you've got all of these people in Slack, how do you take care of this community long term?
Well, we start by creating new communities when we sense that there's a void. So one example of a community that sprung up overnight is the ASU Women in Tech community. So it's all about finding new ways to engage and care for our community, especially in this new remote/hybrid world. So taking care of our community is ensuring that we're creating new spaces and the spaces they need to build those authentic connections. but also continually engaging them in the iterative process. I mentioned that our plan is still in an editable Google Doc. And our materials, a lot of our instructional materials are that way too. So we're constantly going in and updating them, adding new materials, because we believe that just as the feature set grows and we find new applications and pedagogical evidence amounts of the creative and effective applications potentially of Slack for teaching and learning, it's really important that we communicate those findings and create the resources that are going to help people replicate that success and be successful in their own ways. So watch out for more resources and more communities coming from ASU.
I'll take a stab at that as well, Rob, in terms of taking care of your long-term community. When we talked about Tiger teams, it really was a lean team and run lean. Those communication kits really enabled us to partner with our champions to build that community for us and to take care of that community for us in the long term. So that team no longer exists. It's been disbanded, right? And that is critical, that you create a community that is self-sufficient and self-supporting. I would also say provide solutions where real world problems exist. We had a group of first-year success coaches that were engaging with students and not necessarily getting the engagement that they needed. When students did engage, it really helped the success of that student, the retention of that student, and the longevity of that student in their academic career. But if you're a first-year student, even if you're a first-generation student, you might feel lost. You might feel burdened. And if you're not engaging with a success coach, that might be an issue. So we created a solution that they can engage within Slack and create channels and then have one-on-ones with their coaches within Slack, that they can be introduced to coaches within Slack. And this also helps with continuity of operations when we have to suddenly go virtual. It really enabled us to solve for real-world problems. And one of the things that specific group did was create a channel for coaches themselves. That was not something we were trying to solve, but they wanted their coaches to share information and share resources that they were sharing with students. That could be events, that could be templates, that could be forums or websites. And essentially that channel for coaches became a knowledge base that could be searchable and they could utilize over and over again as they engaged with other students. So trust in your community. Trust in that community to actually let it build itself and avoid that real desire to control how channels are going to be created and who should be able to create those. And then, one of the things that I would say really helped with our adoption is we had great sponsorship, executive sponsorship. We had a CIO that was in Slack daily, putting in a daily thought and a quote. And you'd be surprised at how many want access to the executive's thought of the day. And it drove people there. And then from that, you have people starting to affiliate themselves with other channels and start collaborating with one another. And it's not just work related, it's also fun. And that's where you have to really trust in that community to build on itself long-term as well. And they end up supporting one another.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I love the executive sponsorship, the adherence to that clear vision that you had from the very start in every sort of downstream decision that you made, as well as that, that deliberate architecture and design that didn't necessarily stop on day one, right? That the architecture and design continues to be iterative as well. So I did accidentally leave the judges on mute, but I'm going to use my better judgment here and tell you that, that's a 5 out of 5 for me. So thank you both very much for your time, for volunteering and offering these amazing responses to all of our Frontiers attendees. Let me unmute the judges real quick, and it sounds like I guess 5 for 5. It's pretty self-explanatory. we have a winner here. Congratulations to Sam, Warwick, the entire ASU community. You advanced to our Elite Champion Circle with an award to be specified at some point in the future, and probably. But we all know that the real award here is bringing a simpler, more pleasant, and more productive way of working to our colleagues and friends around us. So thank you again. Any last minute, quick words of wisdom to our users before we part?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob. I'll just say, make sure to be your own proof point. Take the time to understand how it works for you and how you're using it. The University Technology Office piloted the use of Slack before we rolled it out to the university, and we rolled it out because we found such incredible gains. And let me tell you, as a remote employee myself, and not just remote because of the pandemic, it's helped me feel instantly connected for such a large organization within a large university. So be sure to be your own pilot, your own proof point, and your own champion, because when you see the value, it definitely shines through when you're communicating about it with any other people.
I love that, Sam. I would add that a tool is a tool, but when designed effectively, it can change how you work and how work gets done. And effectively, when we implemented Slack and I started using it, you had two camps that were still using email and camps that were migrating over to Slack. And for a while, you had to manage both. But the amount of emails that significantly went down because that is how a lot of work was getting done. But when we moved over to Slack, it really changed how work got done. And notifications from other tool sets, you could just turn off. They're not emailing you anymore. You get those notifications in Slack, and you can work your workflows. You can discuss just a stand-up, and you could use tools that enable you to work remotely as teams. There's daily stand-up bots that allow teams to put in their updates. There's reporting that you can get out of other tool sets and display within Slack. It really changes how to collaborate and how to work, which enables for greater success and greater collaborations. And in this service economy, that is how true innovation is going to come about, by collaborating effectively.
There's some really incredible parting words. Thank you again for sharing. Obviously, going for the even more rarely seen 6 out of 5 with those recaps there. So thank you again. As a quick recap, I think of just some of the key themes. Right, launching Slack to this many users takes heart. You had a vision. You engaged your stakeholders. You architected a deliberate solution. You recognized risks and resistance to adoption, and then you really approached your end users with a training plan that met them where they were at their specific personas and made sure you brought value to them. So thank you again for your time, Sam and Warwick, and everyone at ASU. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you again for playing the Slack Launch Game Show. If you'd like to discuss any more of the things you've heard here, please use our Slack workspace for Frontiers, or touch base with your friendly local Slack account executive or customer success manager. Enjoy the rest of your regularly scheduled programming. And thank you again for attending Slack Frontiers, and enjoy the rest of your sessions.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
That was
Thank you. Yeah, Sam, Warwick, you guys are awesome. Like that, I couldn't have hired. I mean, if you guys are ever looking for a job at Slack, let me know. Although I do love having you as partners at one of our customers. So, I mean, that was just awesome. You guys are the best.
That was awesome. Thank you very much.
My 3-year-old needs an internship, Rob. So,
I expect, some post-production explosions, cars flipping. I really want the works.
Is this being produced by Michael Bay or directed by
Michael Bay? Yes.
Horrified.
There has to be a Zoom filter where we can give you a Batman mask, right? There's got to be something like that at some point.
I want the Charlie Kaufman version of this. I want my dialogue spliced over Warwick's, and no one knows if actually Rob's actually in my head or not. All you hear at the end
is John Malkovich right there.
Yes. Sorry.
I am a blonde Batman, which is the worst kind. Val Kilmer was probably the worst Batman ever, right? So Thank you.
Thank you so much for your help.